Hi everyone. I'm sorry for starting a bit later than I had actually announced. So of course Murphy's Law obliges. I had internet problems and was unable to log in. So basically, I decided this morning to do an impromptu live talk to just log online, do a little touch base now that we're a couple of months into the COVID crisis, a couple of weeks post the lifting of the lockdown, where somehow life has kind of wanted to go back to normal. However, there are some consequences, some impact of COVID, namely on the job search market, because this is what is concerning us. So basically, I wanted to just jump in, talk a bit more of what's going on, what's happening, what I see, what I hear, and to reassure you, first and foremost, there is still a lot of hiring. So there's lots of people who have um, indeed lost their jobs. There's a lot of economies, businesses, types of industry, services, etc., who have been more impacted than others. But I keep saying it, in times of crisis, there are always companies, industries, individuals who are affected and those who are opportunistic and who make the most out of it. So if you keep an eye open, there are companies that have massive needs because they have been benefiting from the COVID crisis. So make sure you focus on where the traction is. Actually, that's the first kind of very 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 strategic thing to do at the moment, to also keep your mindset positive in the circumstances, because it's easy to get a kind of alarmist approach with losing your position. So some of you were already unemployed and looking for jobs. Others were employed and looking for a change, and some of you may have just lost your job recently. So I reassure you, there is still traction. I've actually had a huge peak of traction in the last 10 days. So four of my clients have actually landed jobs, and my calendar is full with clients going for job interviews, whether online or in person even. So, in short, there has been some changes as a result of COVID, but if you're job searching, it's definitely not the time to give up. And you might find that my timing is a bit weird because we're heading into summer months, and the general impression is that the summer months are much slower in terms of job searching. Of course, if a lot of key people need to be interviewing you for a job and they're not in office because everyone's kind of taking holidays, the fact of closing a recruitment deal is less likely during the summer. But what I want to emphasize here is that if you want to succeed in your job search, especially at a time of crisis like the time where we are at the moment, you need to be on top of your game, okay? So I'm going to be talking a bit about the impact that COVID has had on the job search market, and on what you can do to basically to adapt to the new changes and to keep your edge in your job search. And that's really super important, because all those things I'm going to be presenting, many of them, when we're talking, for example, about tapping into your network to find job leads, to access the hidden job market, it doesn't happen overnight. And now is the time to actually go out there and to kind of start building that momentum so that you're ready after the summer months. It's a period that's a bit calmer, so people tend to be more receptive, of course, provided they're in office, right? But it's much easier. There's nice weather outside. It's easier to go for a coffee or a more COVID-friendly alternative. But by and large, don't underestimate what you can achieve during the couple of weeks of the summer, in terms of expanding your network, in terms of looking at your positioning strategy, potentially looking at additional trainings to kind of build some kind of competitive advantages, and also, and most importantly, build a solid branding for yourself, and build up that kind of LinkedIn algorithm, so it supports your brand, it establishes yourself, it gets you visible in your field. And why is all of this so important? Well, first of all, I think it's quite obvious that with so many people losing their job, with some companies that are basically financially struggling post-COVID, there will be fewer job opportunities. Okay, there's still going to be job opportunities, but there is going to be increased competition for the jobs that are out there. And this means that and this is nothing new, right? This is nothing new. Many people, I was already hosting webinars last year about the impact of social media platforms on the job search market. And in reality, what those social media platforms have done is to bring a huge traffic. I call it like a tsunami of applicants. And this has made it very difficult for companies to actually cope with that overwhelming number of candidates. And as a result, they've started using alternative approaches. I'm going to get into that. But basically, COVID right now is not bringing anything new per se to the market. Besides, of course, I mean, there are something new, but the main impact of COVID is that it will actually be amplifying the crowded and competitive markets that we were already seeing and that job hunters were already struggling with. Because who says crowded and competitive market says that it's also much more difficult to stand out in those markets, right? To get noticed, to get to an interview, and so on, right? So, in short, how has social media impacted the market? So by social media, I'm mostly thinking about LinkedIn and all those platforms online, which makes it very easy for candidates to go and apply, to see every position that's actually opening up, and to apply on those roles. As a result, there's a lot of candidates to sort through for companies. And basically, what companies have been doing as a reaction to that is that they started using what is called an ATS, applicant tracking system, which is basically, it's a software that's taking the information from your resume, converting it into data entry in a searchable, like extracting the information, putting it into a searchable database. And it's a common knowledge that the ATS is actually going to screen you in or out. It's not so much the case, but basically it's a tool that allows recruiters to do a first screening on candidates based on whether they meet certain criteria, etc. So you can immediately see that most of you have had the experience where you're sending lots of resumes through LinkedIn and you're basically not getting any response, or the most likely responses is kind of like automated rejection email. So this is the situation, and for sure, COVID, more unemployed people, more job hunters, even less reaction, even less traction on the market. So then, in such a case, there are a couple of very important things that you need to do as a job hunter. So first of all is to understand that if you have so many candidates, it's no longer sufficient to actually qualify for a job. Okay, if you have like 300 candidates, you can easily assume that there's going to be a good proportion of those guys who are as qualified or potentially even more qualified than you are, right? So it becomes important for a job hunter to be able then to articulate, to clearly put their cards on the table, to say, hey, okay, I'm qualified, yes, like 300 other candidates, but here is where I'm different. Here's where I'm better than the other candidates. Here is how I'm going to add value in this position. And this is what we call personal branding. It takes a lot of time to kind of most people say, yeah, but it's not easy to nail down your personal brand. It takes some work, it takes some playing around. And once you have that brand, of course, you have to cascade this down into your resume, cascade this down into your LinkedIn profile. So you see me coming, summertime, right? So this is the time to basically think about this, to work on your materials, to optimize it. And one thing that I'd like to mention here that is also important is whether you already have optimized materials or not. I'd like to point out one change that is really brought about by COVID is the following, is that at the moment we're dealing with a market that is not stable. We're dealing with a market that's going to go inevitably through a lot of change. It already has, it's in the process, and we don't know what happens, so we don't know how that's going to evolve, but most companies will start looking back into their strategies. They will start There will be uncertainties, there will be changes, there will be restructuring. And this means that companies are actually looking for different set of soft skills at the moment. It becomes much more important whether you're able to cope with stress and uncertainty, whether you're problem solving, whether you're able to work with limited resources, whether you are responsive to or even able to lead in times of change, to handle change processes, etc. Right? So think about what's going on the market, and is your experience doing this your soft skills that make you able to perform well in such an environment that might destabilize some other people? Is this well reflected in your resume is also like a very, very important question, right? So whether you have a resume that you think is currently optimized or not, what I would say is go back to it, look back into whether it is still positioning you adequately for the new changes in the market, right? So you see that there's some work to be done there, and what I generally see is that most people are unable to answer those questions, to really put their cards on the table, to really see what is different about them. And if you cannot articulate it's the very, very, very foundation of every single thing you do, not only in your job search activities, it's also a key element of career management. So this is a long-term investment, basically. Once you know how to brand yourself, once you get to be able to articulate what you bring to the table, you're going to have a completely different approach, completely different level of confidence when you're job searching, when you're negotiating your salary, when you're negotiating a promotion, and also you're going to get a completely different response. Why? If you're doing networking and you find that people are not very responsive to support you into whether it's with job leads or other things like that, the thing is, in order to help you, people have to be convinced that they will be able to sell you to a company. If you don't create a wow factor from the first impression, you're very unlikely that people will pay attention to you and support your job search efforts or your efforts to get a promotion or whatever it is that you're dealing with in your career at this moment, right? So your branding is at the very core of every single thing that you do, from your resume, from your LinkedIn profile, from how you do your networking, how you handle the conversation, how you handle the interview, right? So if you haven't really done the work to ask yourself what's your branding, how you want to present yourself, then now is the time to do it, because that is going to become increasingly important to stand out in crowded and competitive markets. And I've mentioned already, like, okay, companies are going to go through change. There is another consequence of companies going through change, and that's also a very important one. It will, again, amplify what's currently going on. So one of the reactions of companies in the face of this huge influx of job candidates that was brought by social media platforms, LinkedIn, etc., one of the important consequences was actually the fact that companies started turning more towards their internal network for recruitment. So what we call the so-called hidden jobs. So it's estimated to be 60 to 80% of all the job openings. So those are jobs that are filled up without being like openly advertised, right? So we're talking about 60 to 80%. And this is happening because for employers, it's a better guarantee or an assumption that hiring people through your internal network, hiring people who are somewhat connected to people from the company or acquaintances, etc., are more aware of the company or closer to the company value. It's also easier to vouch for a person's soft skills from through your internal network than it is just seeing from a resume, right? And so this brings me to the impact of COVID. So we talked about a lot of change. We talked about the fact that companies would be looking for different skills. So now we have a kind of a bit of a shift to hire the best people, of course, within a huge pool, a crowded and competitive market. and also a focus on soft skills. And companies in times of crisis, with limited resources, limited budgets potentially to recruit, they will become more risk averse. And in this case, what is going to happen is that they're going to be turning even more to their network to recruit. What does that mean for you as a job hunter? That means a lot more hidden jobs. So if you don't have the network, or if you do have the network, but you don't know how to really properly capitalize on this network, so it generates job leads, so it opens doors to companies, so it gives you visibility to jobs that you would otherwise not see on LinkedIn. If you don't have a strategy in place, if you don't have this kind of networking approach to do that, okay, to capitalize on that network, to make sure that every connection is kind of empowered to and activated in a way to basically look out for jobs, report on jobs, support you into getting the interview, getting the job offer. If you've not activated your network in such a way, if you don't have the network even to start with, that might be even the initial problem. So this will become a huge handicap in the job search. In today's job search market, it was already something very important, something that made a huge difference for job hunters. So the ATS is basically this kind of gatekeeper that makes it difficult to get your resume through to a real person. So in this case, it was already important to have a network that enabled you to open up other doors in companies, so to have other leverages, other entry points. And now you add to this, so COVID is going to amplify this, because there's going to be even more hidden jobs, and basically even more reliance from the employer's standpoint on hiring people who are closer to home, because that is making them more confident. It's easier for them to vouch for the soft skills, which are in turn becoming increasingly important as a result of the COVID situation. And of course, another impact of COVID is that as people are socially distancing, staying at home, as there are more job hunters as well, there is going to be an increase in the amount of traffic that we see online. So on platforms like LinkedIn, for example. So basically, this means yet again an amplification, yet again more candidates on the different jobs, and so on and so forth. And also less chances for you, not less chance actually, more, let's put it the other way around, right? There's a higher need for you as a job hunter to really start using LinkedIn the way it's supposed to be, okay? So for years, we've been job searching using LinkedIn as a database for job openings, and then applying to those job openings. LinkedIn has considerably evolved over the last couple of years. And what I see in job hunters who don't get traction is generally similar. Generally, most of them are basically just applying to LinkedIn with a weak kind of branding. They don't have the network, but LinkedIn is actually a catalyst for your job search if you know how to use it well. And LinkedIn is your tool to build your visibility, to remain in touch with your network, not necessarily just with email and contacts. There are a gazillion numbers of indirect ways that you can use LinkedIn to actually keep your leads warm, keep on top of mind with your leads. And also, and most importantly, LinkedIn is an amazing platform to establish, to propel your professional brand, to get it out there, to strengthen it, to establish it, and to make it visible, whether it's to recruiters, to companies, to people in your network, right? And that is, most people don't know about how to really use LinkedIn. And this is, again, as the summer is coming, like building your visibility on LinkedIn is something that takes time. Building a network takes time, building visibility takes time, and at the core, brainstorming on your brand and transposing it into your resume, your LinkedIn, etc. It takes a certain amount of time, but it does make a huge difference. So basically, that's a bit what I wanted to talk about today. So really encourage you at the core to spend time on those things, to get into action or to stay into action. Don't drop the ball. There are plenty of people in the race, and you need not only to keep your edge, you need to build your edge if you want to be the one landing a job in a crowded and competitive market. And it starts with having a solid brand, and having a solid brand that you can put out there to your network, and diversifying, using using different approaches, basically. So if your strat plan is only to apply through LinkedIn, I can tell you, yeah, you rather go on holidays and have a good time, because that's just not getting results anymore. Okay, so your network is your net worth here. This is where you need to capitalize, but before you go to your network, you need to have a solid brand in place, and it's time to start hanging out on LinkedIn. It's time to start having a visibility plan. So you establish your brand on LinkedIn, so you get people to see you and to see more of you, in terms of not just what's listed on your profile, but you being active on the platform. So I want to take 2 minutes also to just mention I am hosting a 3-part webinar series. It's starting Monday, June 22nd, and I'm going to be touching in depth the 3 key topics on which you should be focusing to kind of like upgrade your job search strategy. So those 3 topics are personal branding, networking, and the new use of LinkedIn. And so basically those webinars are starting next week, and I'm offering them as I know it's a difficult period for job hunters, so I'm trying to make it as easy as possible for everyone. So I've created another super promotion. So I'm offering the webinar at a very discounted price compared to the corresponding courses on my platform. But not only are you getting the webinar at close to 50% discount, but also I'm including a bundle of online courses together with it. So tools to work on your personal brand, to nail down your personal brand. And also what I consider to be the gold nugget on my online course platform, which is a course on networking. So I'm going to address networking, of course, in the webinar, but I've also, because I had so many questions, people, yeah, but I don't know what to say. I understand that networking is important, but I don't know what to do. I don't know how to reach out, etc. So I've basically taken the time to really, really make this super actionable with a unique kind of approach to different channels. So you have different situations and you know exactly step by step who to speak to, with what kind of message, how to find them. You have email templates, over 40 email templates in the course that comes with the webinar. And in addition to that, you also have the step-by-step approaches. I'm helping you also with different topics and ideas for your informal conversation, for your network, tips on how to follow up, strategies to kind of email, stay in touch with people. So you have all of this included with the 3-part webinar series. And in case you cannot make it to the webinars, don't worry. They will all be recorded and made available, lifetime access, basically through the platform. So you get all of this through for 155 euros, which is like it's like almost nothing for what it's worth. Like the courses on the platform are worth close to 500 euros on their own. And I've also made a payment plan available. So if you're job searching and it's a bit of a tricky period at the moment, then it makes it even more accessible. So seriously, key message here, you need to keep your edge. You need to even build your edge if you want to succeed at the moment. And the summer period, unlike what you may be expecting, The summer period is not a period to completely stop your job search efforts. It's a period to refocus on doing the background work of building your brand, adapting your resume, your LinkedIn, expanding your network, and building that algorithm on LinkedIn, which will give you visibility, and on establishing your brand on LinkedIn. And I'm going to show you step by step in details with extensive tools how to do this, so you get traction, and so that when we come back from the holidays, you're leading the race for the few jobs that are available, and then you're able to land your next job despite what's going on post COVID. So, having said that, I will put the link in the comments, and feel free to reach out if you have questions. If you need more information, I'll be happy to help you. And for the rest, I hope to see you next week to power up your job search and give you all the tools you need to succeed despite the time of crisis.